Nevada's cultural heritage is known worldwide, and it's as varied as our bright neon cities and rugged wilderness landscapes. Every week, the Nevada Department of Cultural Affairs brings a piece of that heritage to your living rooms through our documentary series, Exploring Nevada. I'm producer and host Gwen Clancy. Welcome to the colorful world of cultural affairs. If you were in northwestern Nevada between 1870 and 1950, you'd have witnessed daily trains making their way from Carson City to Reno, Virginia City, and south to Carson Valley. Dubbed the Queen of the Short Lines, the Virginia and Truckee Railway hauled silver ore, agricultural supplies, and passengers around northern Nevada. Much has been written about this colorful railroad, but the spur that went to Carson Valley has eluded the limelight. As this priceless archival film footage by Bartell Thompson Pictures reveals, the lifeline to Minden was vital to Nevada's economic growth. For a deeper look into this chapter of Nevada's railway history, we'll turn to a man who spent his boyhood on and about the tracks in Minden, and to train historian Frank Ackerman, who will put it all into context for us.
This yellow depot on Washington Street in downtown Carson City, right at the corner of Route 395, was the operational center for the Virginia and Truckee Railroad, commonly called the V&T. The V&T was built in 3 stages, and each stage had a different objective. The first of those stages was completed in 1870 to connect the mines at Virginia City with mills along the Carson River and ultimately here in Carson City. The second stage followed immediately. 2 years after the Virginia City line was completed, the V&T constructed its line between Carson City and Reno. The objective of that line was to provide Virginia City and Carson City with a connection to the outside world by way of an interchange with the Central Pacific Railroad, which had arrived in June of 1868 in the city that would become Reno. V&T line to Virginia City extended east out of Carson City more or less in a straight line. From here at this corner of the V&T depot on Washington Street, the third line of the V&T started. The line to Minden was constructed in 1906. Now, the V&T Railroad had been chartered to build the lines that it had between Virginia City, Carson City, and Reno. So before the line to Minden could be constructed, it was necessary to get a new charter for the railroad authorizing it to do it. The railroad company was reorganized in 1905, and it started doing business with a new name, the Virginia and Truckee Railway. Now, the Minden line of the Virginia and Truckee Railway started here at the intersection of Plaza Street and Washington at the northeast corner of the V&T depot. And starting out in a gradual curve, it joined up with Stewart Street, and that's the street that it followed on its way out of town.
Here, leaving Carson City and heading south through the Carson Valley. The Indian School at Stewart. A stop to drop off the mail. 2 boys from the school with a wheelbarrow pick it up. Crossing the Carson River trestle.
At the north end of Carson Valley, the old V&T right-of-way is clearly evident.
Right now we're walking along the former route of the Virginia and Truckee Railway between Carson City and Minden, Nevada. This line was constructed in 1906, and it remained in service until the end of the railroad's days in May of 1950.
Yes, that's correct.
With me today is Hap Fisher, Hap was born in Carson City in 1919, and at the time of his birth, his father had been with the Virginia and Truckee Railway for about 20 years, I think.
That's correct, yes. Mm-hmm.
We're standing on the V&T right-of-way between two pole lines. One of them's in use. That's the one off to the east. And on the west side, there's another line of poles. All the wire's been snipped. The poles themselves are pretty weathered. Hap, can you tell us about that? Is there any chance that that's one of the original telegraph poles of the Virginia and Truckee?
I'm sure it is. If you'll notice the reinforcement at the base, they put a small stump in there and held it up so that they could keep using it. Maintenance was a significant part of what we were fighting during the years.
Now, the V&T didn't have a lot of money to spend on maintenance in its final years, did it?
No, it sort of drifted downwards on its maintenance. It was an expensive situation.
And so when the railroad itself was taken up in 1950, not much, well, really not anything survived. The rails were removed, and along with them all of the rest of the hardware, the spikes, the joint bars, the nuts and bolts that help the joint bars.
Yeah, and all the ties were pulled up. And
a lot of them became fences, didn't they?
Yeah, there's a lot of fences you can recognize around here where they used to be ties. They were very select pieces of wood, and they had been creosoted, so therefore they withstood the elements very well.
And 60 years later, we still have a lot of them out here.
Oh yes, they're still here, yes.
Every post you can see as you look south along the former railroad right-of-way, every fence post is a recycled railroad tie. There's no question that they're cross ties because many of them, like this one here, exhibit the spike holes that held the rails in place. You can see it pretty clearly right here in this cross tie where there's a pattern of holes made by the spikes that held the rail in place on this tie. The ties made ideal posts because not only had they been pressure treated, but of course they were about 7 feet long. So there's plenty of posts to put in the ground and good height of about 5 feet or so coming up above ground level. We're at the spot where Stephanie Way intersects Hayburn Road. It's Hayburn Road that runs parallel to the old Virginia and Truckee Railway right-of-way, which is behind me, stretching off in the distance. And at this spot, you get a sense of how completely straight and flat the railroad grade, all the way from the Carson River crossing to a point immediately north of Minden, actually was. And you can travel on Hayburn Road from this point southward all the way to the Douglas County Airport, and you'll be running parallel to the railroad right-of-way the whole distance. Also, Ormsby and Story counties helped finance the original construction of the Virginia City to Carson City part of the V&T by issuing $500,000 in bonds. That was a lot of money in the late 1860s, and the two counties were paid back by the railroad through discount freight rates and discount passenger rates for county business. Here in Douglas County, when it was time to build the Minden extension, the H.F. Dangberg Land and Cattle Company came to V&T management and offered the gift of a right-of-way across their ranch lands for the entire distance between the Carson River and the new town of Minden as a gift